Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Inner Conquest, the world's greatest modern metaphysics channel. I'm your host, Jacob Edens, and today we are going to be discussing how to think accurately. So, thinking is very important because at the core of your, if you want to call it beingness, you think and you focus on things, right? And oftentimes it's overlooked because we overextend ourselves into the nuance of whatever situation we're in, right? So, if you're trying to, fix your car or whatever like that, right? You can start with an assumption that you have to do this and then that, and then you got to fix it with, going to a certain mechanic, but you don't like going there. So your thought process is already from the assumptive standpoint, not where you want it to be. So understanding thinking is important because you want to look at your baseline assumptions before you start what you could call a thought process, right? So a thought process is any sequence of thoughts that implies a unseen reality, right? If I'm thinking about a house and I'm not in the house, then it's a reality in my mind which is unseen to others, right? So that's why they call things like, using your mind to create reality manifestation, because it's an unseen realm that can correlate to the seen realm, which is really good to know, because if you can have that under your control, you can really put yourself into the driver's seat and create what you want at a much higher level. So when you are thinking, treating thinking as a game is really helpful, right? Because it decreases the importance level. When you have old assumptive, what you could call identities of versions of yourself that you want to level up or manipulate or modulate into a new version that is on what you could call fulfillment side of reality, right? So say you started playing chess or checkers and you want to be a master of chess and checkers, right? Well, if you think about that linearly, you can go, well, I'm this version now, so what I need to do are these things, this, and this, and then if I do this, then I'll be this, okay? Your assumption is that you are still that version who is not the grandmaster now, right? So what you want to understand is that everything is now, meaning that if I'm thinking about the past, it's now. If I'm thinking about the future, it's now. So when you go up against a chess grandmaster, that grandmaster is thinking as if he is a grandmaster now, okay? So when you think, taking your assumption into account in terms of what your goal is to be the chess grandmaster. You're not that chess grandmaster right now, but that's your goal. You, instead of thinking from the version of you that's not that right now and needs to do these things, you can instantly jump and do what's called fourth dimensional thinking and think from the assumption that you are that chess grandmaster right now, right? And why do you do that? Well, your mind has magnetic properties, okay? So when you hold a thought in your mind, it basically pulls in a bunch of other thoughts. That's why if you're in a fearful state, you'll have all of the memories and thoughts and all sorts of stuff from other times that you were fearful flooded into your mind, right? If you're in a happy state, you'll have memories of all the times you're happy or whatever. So you have this magnetic aspect of your mind that actually receives different thoughts and energy and information. So when you start with the correct assumption that you already are who you want to be, how do you correlate that when the reality external to you does not reflect that? Well, your reality is a reflection of your previous thinking up until this point, right? So if you had the idea that you want to be a chess grandmaster and you just start thinking that you're a chess grandmaster, what will happen is you will be confronted with the essentially awareness of the reality of the identity that you previously were, okay? So what you have to do in that moment is understand that the external world that you are living in was essentially created from the previous set of assumptions, beliefs, and etc. that you had entertained and accepted as true about your reality. So what happens is when you say, I'm a chess grandmaster, and you go into a game and you get your ass kicked, you still hold the assumption that I am a chess grandmaster. You anchor in what is called an identity, right? So when you have an identity, what that means is that my name is Jacob Edens, right? So if somebody comes up to me and says, hey, Tom, my whole subconscious, my whole nervous system, and my whole being will reject that premise and go, no, I'm not Tom because I am this person, right? So identified with that name. But if I was named Kevin and someone called them Jacob, they'd be like, no, I'm Kevin, right? So your identity is essentially the character within which you inhabit in the earth realm, right? So as you go through life, what you want to do is identify the version of yourself that you want to be and think from the assumption that you are that now. Now, the way that you tango with the reality that is constructed from the previous identity that had much more limiting beliefs, non-fulfillment thoughts, and ideations of needing to be something is that you will see that old awareness come into play. And what you do is you actually overcome that old awareness. And what you do is you actually deny that reality in the same way that if somebody called me Tom, I go, no, I'm actually Jacob, right? It's not a aggressive, fighting, non-acceptance of the reality. Like the reality external to you has manifested, right? So it's there, it's in your face. So what you are essentially doing is you are denying that reality as the end reality, meaning that that is an unfolding reality. That's why in scripture it says not to judge, because judge is a freeze framing. So if you like something, it's actually good to judge it as good, because then you're going to freeze frame it. This is always great. The weather is always great. Everywhere I go, everything's great. Those are good judgments because you're locking into place an acceptance of reality that will then correlate yourself to that version of reality through your habitual awareness, right? So when you are becoming a grandmaster, you are that grandmaster the second that you identify as that and or be that internally, right? The reality is conforming to that internal identity. The only thing that will stop the locomotion of the reality is if you go back into your old identity and go, oh, I knew I was never that. This is actually this way. Why did I think I was that, right? No, you have to have gumption, conviction, and the ability to stand your ground and remain in that identity and go, no, this is actually like this. And then if the external reality is showing you an old version of that awareness of which you've cultivated in your external environment, then what you do is you go into your mind sight and you see the reality that a chess grandmaster would see, meaning that you see yourself beating the individual. You see yourself making a really good play. You see people clapping for you and going, wow, you're really, really good. And the reason that you do that is because the version of you that is the version that you want to be now would be aware of those things, right? And if you are under the impression that your mind has an affect on the external reality, if you accept that premise and you live by that premise, which is essentially the principle of mentalism, which is understanding in the same way that an architect creates a house in his mind and blueprints it and then follows a bridge of incidents and boom, there's the house. You have that same creative ability. If you accept that you have that same mental creative ability, then what you would want to do is define your identification of who you are. So decide who you are. I'm the chess grandmaster. And when the external reality presents you with what you could call contrast, which is what the old version of you before you had identified as that master had believed and assumed to be true, then you need to reconstruct your internal world as if you are that master by seeing the things that that chess grandmaster would see. And what that does is it causes you to think outside of your limitations. Because if you can only think from your current identity of who you've been, you can never truly be free because you can never place your mind on new places. You always need external validation. Well, I lost this tournament, so I guess I'm not a chess grandmaster. So you can't mentally put yourself in the state of what it would be like to be that individual because everything flows out of you, right? That's why you're able to create things in life. You have thoughts, you have ideas, assumptions, and that modulates and forms your reality kind of like clay. So as your ability grows to consciously decide and consciously place your mind onto wanted states of consciousness, you gain the ability to really control what that identification is in the lens that you are seeing through acts out in your mental assumptions, which translates and correlates to how the reality at large unfolds. So all you're ever doing is essentially, if you have an old awareness that isn't up to snuff, you're denying that, not in that it's not actually manifested in front of you, but in that it's not the final end product of who you are. In the same way, if you're riding a bicycle and you just decide, no, I know how to ride this bicycle, and then you keep falling down, you're like, nope, I know how to ride this bicycle. Look, I'm seeing myself riding this bicycle. Nope, I know how to. The reality has to conform to that will and that conviction and that determination. So as you get that will and that conviction and that determination and that focus, which is selective ignorance, meaning that when you focus on something, the reason you're focusing on it is because you're essentially ignoring the other things. So if you've chosen to be the version of yourself that knows how to ride a bicycle, you can't sit there and imagine falling off the bicycle and complaining about not being able to ride the bicycle bicycle, not because you don't have the right or the free will or it's right or wrong to do that. It's just not an accurate thought process in correlation to who you've decided that you want to be. So understanding that that mental paradigm is always a correlative match to an identity allows you to think in a binary way of fulfillment or non-fulfillment. Meaning that if I'm thinking in entertaining and imaginative state, I can understand that by my awareness of that, am I thinking a thought or aware of a scenario that implies I am the version that I want to be, or am I thinking from a non-fulfillment? And as you become more aware of the machinations of your mind, you can actually see when you're in that non-fulfillment thought process that is based in an assumption that you don't have what you want to have and you're not who you want to be. And then you can flip the script and actually change your mind and see it going the way you want it to. And this is the key to essentially creating your reality to your standards and your specifications that you set for it, right? Thinking righteously and thinking accurately is not a moral thing. It's about thinking from a state of I am and I have what I want and what I desire now. That's the criteria. And when that thought is in alignment with that type of mental attitude, your reality, even if it takes some time, will catch up. And this includes your ability to identify with emotional states, thoughts, external circumstances, versions of people. There are no limits on what you can identify and or disidentify with. So if you say, no, I'm perfect right now, and you have a gross feeling or an unwanted thought, you go, no, I'm actually perfect. No, I'm actually perfect. And you build not only your conscious mind's ability to place your awareness on whatever you want, but you also build your defense mechanisms in the same way that if somebody came up to me and said, hey, Tom, how you doing? I go, no, I'm Jacob. Nice to meet you. So I know you guys enjoyed the video today. If you'd like future videos made on specific topics, feel free to leave them in the comments section. My link tree has the links to all of my protocols. I have the Modern Metaphysics protocol. I have the Spartan 1 protocol. And I also have coaching as well. So if you want to do a call or you want to do text, it's all in there. And feel free to email me if you have any questions. But more important than any of that, go conquer. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.